Hello, welcome to the Southern Bible Thumper channel. For this upload, we will be reading 2 Samuel chapter 18. And David numbered the people that were with him and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. And David sent forth a third part of the people under the hand of Joab, and a third part under the hand of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and a third part under the hand of Ittai, the Gittite. And the king said unto the people, I will surely go forth with you myself also. But the people answered, Thou shalt not go forth. For if we flee away, they will not care for us, neither if half of us die, will they care for us. But now thou art worth 10,000 of us, therefore now it is better that thou succour us out of the city. And the king said unto them, What seemeth you best I will do. And the king stood by the gate side, and all the people came out by hundreds and by thousands. And the king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Deal gently for my sake with the young man, even with Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains charge concerning Absalom. So the people went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was in the wood of Ephraim, where the people of Israel were slain before the servants of David, and there was a great slaughter that day of 20,000 men, for the battle was there scattered over the face of all the country, and the wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. And Absalom met the servants of David, and Absalom rode upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up between the heaven and the earth, and the mule that was under him went away. And a certain man saw it, and told Joab, and said, Behold, I saw Absalom hanged in an oak. And Joab said unto the man that told him, And behold, thou sawest him, and why didst thou not smite him there to the ground? And I would have given thee 10 shekels of silver and a girdle. And the man said unto Joab, Though I should receive 1,000 shekels of silver in mine hand, yet would I not put forth mine hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king charged thee and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Beware that none touch the young man Absalom. Otherwise I should have wrought falsehood against mine own life, for there is no matter hid from the king, and thou thyself wouldst have set thyself against me. Then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. And 10 young men that bare Joab's armor compassed about and smote Absalom and slew him. And Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing after Israel, for Joab held back the people. And they took Absalom, and cast him into a great pit in the wood, and laid a very great heap of stones upon him. And all Israel fled, every one to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and reared up for himself a pillar, which is in the king's dale. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. And he called the pillar after his own name, and it is called unto this day Absalom's place. Then said Ahimaaz the son of Zadok, Let me now run, and bear the king tidings, how that the Lord hath avenged him of his enemies. And Joab said unto him, Thou shalt not bear tidings this day, but thou shalt bear tidings another day. But this day thou shalt bear no tidings, because the king's son is dead. Then said Joab to Cushi, Go tell the king what thou hast seen. And Cushi bowed himself unto Joab and ran. Then said Ahimaaz the son of Zadok yet again to Joab, But howsoever, let me, I pray thee, also run after Cushi. And Joab said, Wherefore wilt thou run, my son, seeing that thou hast no tidings ready? But however, said he, let me run. And he said unto him, Run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and overran Cushi. And David sat between the 2 gates, and the watchman went up to the roof over the gate onto the wall, and lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man running alone. And the watchman cried and told the king. And the king said, If he be alone, there is tidings in his mouth. And he came apace and drew near. And the watchman saw another man running. And the watchman called unto the porter and said, Behold, another man running alone. And the king said, He also bringeth tidings. And the watchman said, Methinketh the running of the foremost is like the running of Ahimaaz the son of Zadok. And the king said, He is a good man, and cometh with good tidings. And Ahimaaz called, and said unto the king, All is well. And he fell down to the earth upon his face before the king and said, Blessed be the Lord thy God, which hath delivered up the men that lifted up their hand against my lord the king. And the king said, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant, and me, thy servant, I saw a great tumult, but I knew not what it was. And the king said unto him, Turn aside and stand here. And he turned aside and stood still. And behold, Cushi came. And Cushi said, Tidings, my lord the king, for the Lord hath avenged thee this day of all them that rose up against thee. And the king said unto Cushi, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Cushi answered, The enemies of my lord the king, and all that rise against thee to do thee hurt, be as that young man is. And the king was much moved, and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went thus, he said, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son. In the previous chapter, 2 Samuel 17, Ahithophel, David's highly regarded advisor, tells Absalom he wants to end David's life. Hushai advises Absalom to make a better plan. Ahithophel ends his life after realizing that Absalom has taken Hushai's advice over his. The two messengers assigned to warn David must hide in a well to avoid Absalom's men. The current chapter, 2 Samuel 18, David organizes his army into thirds for Ittai, Joab, and Abishai to lead. David and his army defeat the Israelite army under Absalom's leadership. Absalom becomes entangled into a tree while he was riding a mule, suspending him into the air. Unable to move, David's army ends his life. David mourns his son. Summarizing 2 Samuel chapter 18, we are in the midst of a hostile takeover. King David's son Absalom has convinced Israel that he should be king. David has had to leave his home, his possessions, his wives, and he's had to leave running barefoot and crying. In verses 1 through 5, David organizes his troops into thirds and assigns leadership to Ittai, Joab, and Abishai. In verse 2, David tells them that he wants to march with them. And in verse 3, the people convince him, No, you shouldn't go. Your life is far too valuable. You should stay here in the city. Verse 4, David says, Okay, I'll do what you think is best. And King David commands them, Please treat my son gently for my sake. Verses 6 through 17. So now we're going to focus on the team or David's army. How this is worded in verse 7, Israel's army and David's soldiers. That's how we're differentiating the two groups of people. We know that David is an Israelite and the men that are under him are mostly Israelites, but to help us understand how things went in this disagreement, the people that are under Absalom's leadership, the people who have been manipulated to change their heart towards David, those are the people that are going to be called Israel's army. And the group of people who are on David's side, out here in the wilderness, those people are going to be called David's soldiers. So just to clear that up. So David's soldiers win, and it's a slaughter. 20,000 of Israel's army died. And it says that the forest uh, ended more lives than the actual fighting did. So the conditions of where the fight was itself ended more people than actual fighting did. Verses 9 through 15 details a very unfortunate scenario for Absalom. He was riding on a mule. As he was going under one of the trees, one of them scooped him up and entangled him into the branches while the mule continued running. This leaves Absalom suspended in air. David's servants find him And one man tells Joab, Joab says, "Why didn't you kill him?" He said, I wouldn't dare to because of the command that David gave us." So Joab takes 10 men and they surround him or encompass him, surround him, struck him, smote him. So Joab blew the ram's horn, and reading this, verse 16, blowing that horn ends the war. David's servants take Absalom, throw him in a pit, cover the pit with rocks, and go back to their own tents. Verse 18 is the standalone piece of information, just telling us that Absalom made a pillar, calling it his monument because he said he doesn't have a son to preserve the memory of his name. And I kind of wonder why he would say or why this is in here because I just wonder why it's there. At this point he's gone. And when we look at 2 Samuel 14 verse 27, three sons were born to Absalom and a daughter who he names after his sister Tamar. So he does have three sons, but for some reason he said he doesn't have a son to preserve the memory of his name. So I don't know. And this piece of information being here, I just wonder what the significance is. If this wasn't here, we could still know what was happening in this story. Okay. I'm looking too deeply into one detail. We get to verses 19 and 23. Ahimaaz is one of the servants that are messengers. So Ahimaaz wants to run and go tell that what just happened. He says he wants to tell David the good news that the Lord has vindicated him. And Joab says, "No, because you're not going to take good news. You can do it another day, but this isn't good news. The king's son is dead." So Joab says to a Cushite, another messenger, to tell the king. So when we read in the King James Version, Cushi was the name. But when we look at these other versions, it's saying to the Cushite. And a Cushite is an Ethiopian. When we even look here at 2 Samuel in the Interlinear Bible, this is the closest translation we have. This is on Bible Hub. So when we look at 21, and said Joab to the Cushite. So just because the Bible has been translated so many times, we will see discrepancies like this. And just something to notice. So Ahimaaz wants to tell, Joab tells the Cushite to tell, the Cushite starts running, and then Ahimaaz says, "I want to run too." So he's like, "All right, well then run." So they both go to David, and Ahimaaz outruns the Cushite or Cushi because he really wants to tell. So then we get to 24 through 33. David was sitting between the city gates, and some of the men that he worked with saw a man running alone. They tell the king he's bringing good news. One of them seemed to recognize Ahimaaz, saying he's a good man. He comes with good news. When I read this might be why, because to me, it just seems really like small that Joab would say, "No, you don't go and tell him the good news. This other guy needs to tell him the good news." It sounded really petty. But if Ahimaaz usually brings good news and this is actually bad news that's going to make David sad, maybe don't send the guy who always has good news to bring something bad. Okay. So Ahimaaz told the king what happened, but what makes this so dumb is he knows that Cushi was coming to tell him the entire story. Ahimaaz, says, "All is well. Blessed be the Lord. He delivered up the men who rebelled against my Lord." The king asks, "Well, is Absalom all right?" And Ahimaaz says, "Well, I don't know. I mean, I heard a disturbance, but I didn't hear that." Which is why Zo- Job probably said, "Just let the other guy tell it because it's unnecessary. You don't need this many people for you to not tell him. You don't want to tell him the bad news. Let the other guy tell him the bad news." There's a disturbance. I don't know what it was. So then the king said, "Just move aside." Then the Cushite came. "The Lord had vindicated you today." And the king asked him, "Is Absalom all right?" And the Cushite replied, "I wish that the enemies of my Lord would all go the same way as that young man." So that let David know that Absalom is dead. And so in verse 33, he is mourning and mourning and mourning. Another thing that I noticed about this chapter, about the whole messenger thing, how these messengers, they're not like highly regarded. They're sort of like errand boys. So just having, I hate to call it a lowly position, but it is a lowly position, to be so lowly, to want to still be a person that tells everything, tells every news. See how that goes together with someone who's lowly, a lowly mindset. You don't want to tell the bad news, but you want to be in the mix telling something. Just haven't seen that trait with anyone who has a lot of power so far, who talks a lot, who loves to tell what somebody else is doing or tell some news. Just something that I noticed. Well, that's all we have for 2 Samuel chapter 18. Thank you for clicking on the video. Please like, comment, subscribe, share. I would love to hear from you. I love you. Have a wonderful day.